Fragments of Silicon, unlikely to be a major Broadway musical anytime soon.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always are Petty and Golix. Let us get to the news. Well, Petty, we're starting off with you, and not for the reasons you might think.
Well, because I'm the reason we didn't have a show last week, because I got the flu.
Yes. Yes, you did, apparently.
Yeah, it was not good. I was using the restroom a lot. It was not a fun time to be at this house. So yeah,
and how's that going a week later?
Fine. Well, it's fine. The other thing, not so much. So, for those of you who don't know, I can't really talk about this a whole lot, but Saturday, my mom, my sister, myself, and a family friend were involved in a vehicle accident. And lawyers are getting involved. Potentially. So, we're still waiting to hear if they're actually going to take the case. Because, this is going to be fun to discuss when I actually can. So yeah, that's going to be a time. Mom's car is totaled. So we get to go for the fun joy of car shopping again. And she just received her payoff notice for her car. So that's fun. Wait, no, opposite of fun. So yeah, that's going to be... As far as the insurance part of this could be handled by this weekend. Anything involving outside of that, I will let y'all know, because it's going to be a time if the lawyer actually decides to take it. And yeah, as far as other gamery things, not a whole lot happening. Because, getting over an accident kind of sucks. I have been repairing a few computers. Because for people who don't know, I am a certified computer repair technician. It's just hard to get work because of physical disability. But family, friends, and my mom's coworkers, I will fix computers. So gives me something to keep my skills sharp. And I have a couple that are ready to go out the door, so hopefully it begets more repair work that begets more money for cards. But yeah, I think that's it from me. So, Gullix?
So the real weird thing is that we seem to be getting the first ad break 5 minutes into the stream or whatever.
Twitch.
Anyway, I'm going to keep track tonight. So yeah, relatively low key here, I guess. It's very cold.
Yeah, same here.
And we had some snow. Thankfully, not a catastrophic amount, just enough to help make it a little bit lighter in the dark. But I don't know. It's nice. My parents are down visiting my sister and her baby again, unsurprisingly. And I don't know, not a super whole lot of other real life stuff going on, I feel like. Video game wise, I've actually mostly been playing Balatro lately. I managed to get through all 5 of the base color decks that unlock a deck just for beating it with them after freaking being stuck on the black deck for like most of a week because the one less hand is a huge... I mean, once you get like halfway through the game with it, it's easy with the extra Joker thing, but early game it sucks. Because you get one less hand, and that also, since you get paid for remaining hands, that's like one less maximum dollar you can get possible on each thing, so...
Right.
So yeah, I did that. I still need to... I still haven't done anything above the base difficulty. And I'm still trying to get myself better at, you know, thinning the deck and trying to do...
Yeah. I need to find some more time to play Balatro. It may
trying to do a proper, like, deck that's good at straight flushes and 5 of a kinds and stuff.
If it wasn't so expensive on mobile, I almost kind of want to get it on my phone.
I've been trying to get my mom to look at it, but she's a little bit concerned because she doesn't like games that get harder, but
I mean,
she does like solitaire and stuff, so
yeah,
I'm
it's
thinking
basically solitaire, yeah.
Yeah, but she said she likes games that are a little bit mindless better, and I don't know. I still want to try and like actually show her how it plays at some point, but...
Yeah, I kind of want to set up the remote connection thing and let my dad try it, because he likes card games like this. He used to play poker when he was younger, so this might be up his alley.
But yeah, Mom's not interested in many things that I am, so I thought that might be something, anyway.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much it. I'll let you know if I remember anything else, but I think that's pretty much everything important.
Okay, then. I guess it's my go. Let's see. Well, the big news here is the heating and AC unit just got replaced.
For those of you who don't know, Adam is in Florida.
Right. But this actually had little to do with the actual heater. And more to do with the fact that that unit is over a decade old.
Makes sense.
And also apparently had not been properly maintained.
Yeah.
So there was a accumulation of growth, mold.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. Judging by Florida, it's probably mold.
Yeah. That was growing on the motor itself. That had been collecting with the way that the air was flowing through the unit.
Right.
And that meant there was so much of that on the thing. It had changed the way the motor functioned.
Yeah, we have some window ACs that had that problem that had to be thrown out of a second-story window. Not fun.
Right. Can't exactly do that with a unit that's about half the size I am.
Right, yeah, these were just window units.
Also
on the side with no neighbors to deal with, so who cares?
Yeah. Well, also, cleaning wasn't an option because the machinery was compensating for the weight. That's how long this growth had been there, apparently.
I'm shocked it worked.
Well, it was said that thing could have gone at any time.
Makes sense.
So, could have been tomorrow, could have been a year from now.
It could have
But
been
at
in the
some
middle of the summer heat.
could have been in the middle of this cold freeze.
Mhm.
By the way, it's almost freezing here.
Damn.
Like,
For Florida, that's
yeah.
impressive.
Well,
For
especially
me
since
and Golek, that's like, huh, is it Tuesday? Or is it just a Wednesday?
I'm like, well, it's also because Tampa area is a bit more subtropical than say the Panhandle. Like the Panhandle has been getting snow.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't reached the snow phase.
Right.
Help us if we do, because
Oh, God.
like
Seeing
I
how
don't
snow
know.
tires aren't required in the state of Florida? Yikes.
Well, why would they be?
Exactly. That's why that'd be a major problem.
That's not even the thing I'm thinking of. I'm thinking about like fucking things that bulldoze off the snow. Like
Yeah.
they don't exist here because it's Florida. We don't get snow.
Right.
Like anyway, so new unit was installed today, and took a while, took all day, but it's working. And by the way, this was off the back of the electricity going out, and having an electrician called in.
Fine.
But that's kind of all of this is kind of the supers problem.
Yeah.
But that was the problem was found. It took a bit of finagling because of which wire was loose. So that's the reason that took 3.5 hours to complete. Like, and it was more. Well, I guess it was more like the power was half out. Like half the place had the power going on, and half different circuits.
Yeah. I've had that problem before. Not fun.
No.
Not cheap either.
Yeah. I mean, for how much it cost and what was involved, it was a surprisingly good deal.
Mm.
It's like I won't get into it here. Anyway, in terms of games that I have been playing, I guess the main game I've been playing for reasons that actually kind of escape me is Vay or Vi. I was never sure how to pronounce it.
Which one is
it's
this?
VAY. If you don't know what this was the Working Designs Sega CD RPG that wasn't one of the Lunar games.
Oh.
I'm like, there are reasons why this game is far more obscure than those. Many, 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 many reasons. Not the least of which is like, this is among the most 5 out of 10 RPGs I've ever played. And this is coming out in 1993.
Right.
So it's operating on that level.
Damn.
So it's very basic, except for the fact that it's got CD quality audio and Sega CD quality cinematics. I'm like, which are a lot rougher in the year of 2025.
Yeah.
Especially since it looks like they had the direct sourcing. Like it looks like it came off. The cinematics look like they came directly off a Sega CD. That's not a good thing.
Yeah. They didn't have the masters to up-res.
Yeah, I'm like, and the voice acting sounds like it was from the early 90s too.
For better or for ill, depending on what you're into.
Yeah, translation's new. still is obnoxious. Like, so in that sense, it's in the spirit of working designs. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for news this week. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Benjamin Riviera of BancyCo. Am I pronouncing that right?
You got the company name right. Benjamin
Hooray!
Rivers.
Sorry. Anyway, right. So how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the studio, the games, and all of that business. And we do this by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Oh boy, I mean, I'm an old fella now, so I've been playing games since the early '80s. So for me, games were always just around. My first gaming console was an Intellivision, a hand-me-down Intellivision, in the early '80s before the NES came out. And so I just played stuff like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on there, Night Stalker, and a bunch of other stuff that fellow olds might understand. But the those were just there, and I just loved technology, even though I didn't quite realize it as a kid. So games and the sort of emergent, a personal computer boom of the '80s. So I was always interested in anything I could get my hands on related to, like digital games. So yeah, right from an early age, I was sort of born into it.
Everybody still connected, or is Adam having network issues?
Yeah, that was weird. That cut out there for a bit.
I heard.
I'm
I
still
think you
here.
might. Yeah, I think you might be having network issues again, Adam.
No, I'm here.
All right.
Man, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
All right. As you were saying,
I think I was done answering the question.
okay. And what about professionally? Where, where did you start there?
Yeah, sure. So what happened was the indie game scene in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which is where I am, began started to pick up just after the iPhone launched in 2007. That was for a few reasons, because the sort of indie scene that had sort of was created around like Xbox Live Arcade and a couple other things like 2006, 2007 was happening. Software such as Game Maker and even things like Unity were starting to come out in some form back then. So game development software and ways to make games were actually being created and becoming much more accessible to people who weren't necessarily like hardcore programmers. So Toronto's a big art and music town. So there were people here who had been putting on art shows and gallery showings and sort of just events related to digital stuff and interactive stuff. And I got to meet some people who ran that, including some people who were heroes of mine in the local space, in like the artist world, comics world. So quickly I found out, hey, there's people who make video games around here. Like, that's amazing. And I had only ever done anything, like the only game related stuff I had done before that was hobbyist stuff. So when I was a kid, I used to design games on paper, like the Intellivision I mentioned. I used to design Intellivision games, like essentially by drawing them all out on paper, like mapping the whole thing. And then I started making like Wolfenstein levels and Doom levels in the 90s. And then this stuff happened in Toronto in the mid 2000s, and I got to take a workshop for a thing called the Artsy Games Incubator, in which it was a 6 week thing, but in which all of us who were essentially like arts people or music people, no one was an actual like programmer. We got to learn how to make games. So I got to learn using some basic software, and then moving on to more complex stuff like Game Maker. And essentially by the end of the 6 weeks, I made my first quote unquote game. which at that time was a sort of a digital prequel to the graphic novel that I was writing at that point called Snow. And a bunch of us came up in these similar programs or around the sort of art scene and started. Some people got jobs at game companies nearby. I didn't, but then eventually I started making more of these little jam games and whatnot until I started to work on Home, which was our debut game, which originally came out commercially in 2012. And so my professional start in games was a complete accident. I was freelancing. I quit my job a couple years before in the design space, the graphic design world. I was running my own freelance operation, paying rent and just doing all that and working on games when I could and participating in local game community events. And then I was working on Home. It was meant to be kind of a jam game. I didn't really know what I was doing. In terms of programming, I was learning a lot at the time about how to use GameMaker and how to actually do proper programming. And then I submitted the game for the IGF, the Independent Games Festival, which is still running today, of course, at GDC. And the trailer got posted on the IGF website, and then it got picked up by a bunch of gaming websites. And I forget which ones were the big ones at the time who picked it up. But we got picked up, and I remember checking. I had a mobile phone of some kind at that point. And I remember coming out of a comics event and then checking my phone, and then somehow I got an alert. So I don't remember how it was back then, but that the trailer was being discussed. And then I looked up and went, wait, what's going on? And then I started to find people talking about the Home trailer and posting around all these different sites. So there was some buzz there. And so there's a very long way to answer your question. uh, my professional career started the day I launched Home, and we had a surprisingly really good launch. We got real lucky, and when the Steam launch itself was the big one, and then I said, okay, I think I can take a stab at this, and at the end of the year, I'm going to wind down my client work, and I'm gonna work on this full time, like become a game developer full time. So at the end of 2012, I officially stopped doing other freelance work, and then as of January 1st, 2013, I was working on games full time. So BancyCo started, or what was then called Benjamin Rivers Inc. started in June 2012 when we launched the first version of Home, and then as we put out subsequent versions, I supposedly created a game dev career.
Uh, um, and what precipitated the change from using your own name to BancyCo? What is a Bancy anyway?
Sure. So my wife's name is Nancy, so it's a portmanteau of our two names because it's like our celebrity couple name. So
Gotcha.
we actually worked together, but she was never she was sort of not in the spotlight before. But what happened was I kept the name Benjamin Rivers Inc. at the time because um, that was my name uh, on my tax forms for freelance work. And when we incorporated, because we had to incorporate to put the game out on Steam, I just kept it as that because I thought, well, if this doesn't work, or I can still use the company for other stuff and not, I had no idea the games were going to go anywhere. So this way, at least I have a corporation now for my work, and we'll figure this out at that point. So the name stuck as we went through Home, and then Alone with You, and then Worse Than Death. But then as we were working on our fourth game, Near Harbor Rescue Squad, we realized we wanted to rebrand because the name seemed a little old and stale at that point, and because Nancy, of course, was always there um, working with me on stuff. It seemed weird to just have just my name out there. And as she joked, she's like, I don't want to say I work for you, the company. That's weird. So our story as it came out as we were dealing with people like Apple and some other events that we went through was people really liked the fact that we were sort of a mom and pop shop, a couple making games together. So when we went to look for a new company name, we went through 40, 50 name variations, did a bunch of rebranding and all that sort of stuff, which again, we come from the design space. So that's like a standard practice doing one of these big identity, rebrands. You have to do all this research and whatnot. And we basically stuck with what was probably our second choice, which was just calling it BancyCo. Um, and that's how we've been since 2020.
Hmm. Okay then. So I suppose that leads me to, the game we want to feature here, and that is Neo Harbor Rescue Squad. Has the game been in development since 2020, or later, sooner?
It was a pretty protracted development process. It was our longest project by far. Pretty torturous in a lot of ways. It wasn't in full-time development, but it was essentially in part-time development for about 4 years, or 3.5 years to 4 years, which is way too long. And the way that worked is that we submitted a proposal for funding. So here in Ontario, we have arts and like arts funding for games and digital media. So we submitted a proposal to do a prototype for that. And we worked with another company locally to do that because we were doing that game in Unity, which was our first Unity title. We previously used Game Maker for everything. So we wanted some expertise to help us ease into that because neither of us were familiar with Unity, and there was a bunch of stuff that we had to learn there. So that process was a little slower than we would have liked just because of people's time and the natural way that stuff goes. And we had to kind of figure out what the game was past our initial concept. And there was a bit of a waiting period in between that prototype delivery and then we started full production because we were pitching it to publishers and consoles and other partners to get funding or green green light in other ways the full production of it, make sure people's salaries were covered. So then several months later that finally happened. We've actually kicked off the game proper, and then once again we were working with this other companies, so they're not always on the project full time, but we're essentially on it thinking about it full time. So within that 4 years is the development cycle. If you added up all the hours of how much I spent thinking about it, it was full 4 years full time. If you added up the number of hours we actually spent physically producing it, it would be less, and I could not tell you how long that would be. But it's been a giant blur.
I can imagine. That's a pretty standard story for projects that got started around that time, for obvious reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually pandemic related. But
Yeah, and normally we like to work pretty quickly. Like Home is obviously it's a tiny game. It was made very quickly. Alone with You, our second game, was more painful because I was learning a lot of stuff, and it took like a year and a half, almost 2 years. Actually, I think it took about 2 years. Worse Than Death was a nice, fast turnaround, all things considered. I think it was like a year and 3 months or a year and a half. I really like that. And then we went to Neo Harbor, which was just a time sink. So let's hope we never do that again because that was way too long to work on one project.
I'll cross your fingers, I suppose. At any rate, I'm wondering what germinated the idea here, because we reviewed Neo Harbor Rescue Squad not too long ago, and I remarked this game reminded me a lot of games you would see on like the Nintendo DS or the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you're 100% right with that. That was certainly the intention.
okay, I figured as much, but I wasn't exactly sure. And I suppose wondered then, as I do now, what was the impetus for creating a game that harkened back to that era?
So the impetus for the game wasn't to specifically harken to that era, but as I'll explain, we found a lot of joy in that we took forward to the game design. The original idea was that because Nancy and I were working, I was the main creative director of the first three games: Home, Alone with You, and Worse Than Death. And then for New Harbor, we wanted to make one of Nancy's ideas because I got to do three things, and she had a bunch of stuff that she wanted to work on. And New Harbor ended up being what that first big idea was, and it was based on our friend who's a paramedic in Hong Kong. And Nancy's from Hong Kong, so this is sort of personal to us. And he kept telling us about his job, and we were like, "There's no way this is what your job is like. This is bananas. Like, how do you pull like a severed arm out of a lake, or like out of a harbor, before lunch, and then go eat with your friends and do all this stuff? It's crazy." So we we wanted to make a paramedic game, and before the DS and Wii angle came up, the core of the game was actually based on this cooking game from the Japanese PS1 era called Ore no Ryori, which just means my cooking, and it was never released in English except for as a demo on one of the PlayStation demo discs. And if you've ever seen the very successful, popular indie series Cook Serve Delicious, that series is also based on that game. David Galindo, who's the creator of that series, played that demo, whatever, a long time ago, and then realized he wanted to make something with that.
We featured the developer of those games on this program a couple of times.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, David's an amazing guy, and so he had taken a lot of inspiration from that game, and Nancy wanted to take it from that because there's just a certain arcade element of like a frenetic energy. There's a lot of humor, and even though there can be like things that you do over and over because of the situation, it gets the chaos ends up giving it more variety than you would expect. So obviously with New Harbor, we reference a lot of Trauma Center and games like WarioWare and Cooking Mama. Those are our three major inspirations. They're actually in our design docs that we use to pitch the game. And those, yeah, and the things about those were like obviously Trauma Center is for the medical angle, but Trauma Center is uh, like generally very slow, deliberate, one patient at a time, whatnot, except for the final game on Wii. But the being a paramedic is different than being a doctor. You know what I mean? You're always making multiple decisions. You're triaging in real time. You have to sort of like switch context very quickly. So we realized that if we just did something that was explicitly like Trauma Center, it wouldn't make sense for the job. But then we looked at stuff like Cooking Mama, which Nancy is like, like aced Cooking Mama. She's super good at them because they reminded her of the cooking game. We realized how much fun those were and how they kept that frenetic energy that we liked. Because even though you're doing like simple rotations and taps and chops and all that kind of stuff, it's the mix and match nature of all those little mini games that make a recipe unique and interesting. And so we sort of realized we had our concept right there. And then the WarioWare stuff was that as I was playing some more WarioWare games for research, I just realized like, boy, when you just sort of add goofy humor or you kind of don't let yourself get too serious, like you can have way more fun with what you're designing, and you don't have to be too realistic or whatnot. So we allowed that to permeate the design of the game, and as we went through, we sort of stopped worrying about making things too too realistic and just let ourselves have a bunch of fun with the different mini games. So I still have a Wii. We both have DSs and all that stuff. So we were playing a bunch of those games as we were developing to just remind ourselves about that very like accessible pick up and play nature of those games of that era, and just how fun it was to like play a game where the core of what you do is not move a character through an environment. The core of what you do is like a focused action. In the case of like being a doctor and using tools, or using kitchen implements or whatnot to work through a recipe.
Yeah, and I suppose my next question here is, what was it like designing that kind of game for a traditional control scheme? Because there were I don't remember a lot of this kind of game on, say, the Xbox 360, for example.
Yeah, they so when we design all of our games, we always design them for multiple control schemes at the same time, like from the beginning. So we always do it for PC. We also generally include like touch and mobile as a main consideration in case we want to do that, and then also of course controller. So the way we worked through the treatments in Neo Harbor was to look at other games, of course, and platforms that had done stuff, and the Cookie Mama stuff on DS and 3DS were good examples because they generally use like the circle pad and buttons, and of course sometimes also the touchscreen. But then we also looked at a bunch of other games that had mini game stuff, including like track and field games. Again, the cooking game from PS1, and there was also a PS2 sequel, and some other sports games that had used a lot of controller-based mini games and like little micro mechanics. And then what we basically did was like make a giant list of essentially stuff that was fun to do with a controller. So, rotating a stick, wiggling a stick, tapping buttons in order, like all that stuff, just every possible thing we could think of. And then we worked on going through those lists and assigning them to potentially different treatments or activities, and then took those and said like, okay, what also works, as a keyboard or can be used with a mouse or potentially use with touch if we want to do that. And then wherever there was a situation where it felt like we could say do something fun with a controller but no way to really map that to something else, we put those on the back burner and then focus on the control schemes that were easily translatable to different controls. So there were some challenges. There were a few mini games where we had designed them controller first at the beginning to sort of test stuff out and to prototype, and then we realized, oh boy, we got to pull a bunch of this apart and kind of glue it back together again once we realized we need to accommodate other control schemes, because how we had done it required some very different logic. So that was a challenge, and it was also just a good learning experience as well.
And I guess shifting back to the tonal stuff that you were talking about not too long ago, because it's a thing that doesn't just permeate the mini games. The entire game is very, I guess, for lack of a better term, wacky, silly even. I think, as the game itself noted, like one of your rescue team members is a talking dolphin.
Right.
So I'm wondering, did the wackiness seep into the writing, or were you always planning to do that? How did that come about?
Yeah, so there was at the very beginning, it was meant to be a little more murder mystery, maybe like a little darker, like an Ace Attorney game. And this was, in the middle of the pandemic, we were writing this stuff, and neither one of us wanted to write anything serious or dark. And my wife and I, it's how we met, but we both love manga. Like, I read a crap ton of manga every year. So I was reading a lot of lighthearted stuff and like romance stuff and stuff that was sort of out of the zone that I had read before, and really opening myself up to a bunch of great classic mangaka. And in that, I realized how much I loved good comedy stories. And so we were designing the characters and just playing around with stuff. And again, they were a little bit stiffer and more quote unquote realistic. And then for some reason, I think it was my idea. I said, like, what if we just had a dolphin as one of the characters? Like, the engineer's a dolphin, because then they could have like a floating base, and then the dolphin lives with them and all this kind of stuff. And Nancy was like, yeah, that's awesome. And then the way she puts it is, once we agreed to have a dolphin character, like, all bets are off. We could do whatever we wanted. So we just allowed ourselves to have a lot more fun. And, our first 3 games are much more serious. Like Home is obviously a horror game. Worse Than Death is as well. They both deal with, Worse Than Death more specifically deals with more specific issues, around trauma and other things. And of course, Alone With You can be pretty dour at times as well, and very tragic. But I'm actually best at writing comedy, I realized. And so once we decided, yeah, we don't have to make this too serious. Like, think of it like a shonen manga. It's okay. You can explain away a lot of stuff if you need to, but just make sure you're always having fun. And like, there's always a laugh and a bad joke in there somewhere. Once that happened, and we made that part of the design, then the writing just got easier, because I'd find myself having difficulty writing a particular moment, and then I just find like a good cutaway to a joke and be like, good, next scene, like off he goes. Great. So I think it was cathartic and therapeutic for us, especially since we had to live with it for so long, to at least be able to write and experience like a goofy comedy story, and with bad puns and a bunch of other stuff. And so that was, yeah, definitely totally different than what we did before, but absolutely needed, I think, at the time in our careers.
Probably so. Um, and yeah, that writing approach definitely explained some stuff that I was puzzling over when I was playing it, like the rivalry the rescue squad has with the fire department. Like that's a very shonen thing. Like, gotta admit, it's still a bit of a head scratchers that the fire department's having a bit of a beef here, but whatever.
Yeah, that's actually based on real life. So in Hong Kong, the way the emergency services are organized are different than in North America, and
Uh,
the EMTs and the fire department are essentially under the same umbrella. So the reason we have the rivalry with the fire department is because that's a real thing that happens. So they operate under the same department. They're sort of budgeted under the same whatever umbrella, but what the department gets to do and what the ambulance or like EMTs get to do are different. So we wanted to bake that into the rivalry so people who would know, like people who would sort of be from that space in Hong Kong would be able to tell, like, yeah, this is totally how this is. Like these guys are so cool. And one of the things about the reason why we have the Rescue Squad theme song the way they do is in Hong Kong. You can look this up on YouTube. The fire department, the real Hong Kong fire department, has their own theme song sung by Donnie Yen, and it's like super rambunctious, total like cheesy canto pop song. But it's like they got like a celebrity to sing them a raucous, inspiring anthem. But the EMTs don't get that. So the direction that I gave when we did the main theme for the game, which you can hear on the title screen at certain other points, was essentially we're making our own theme song for the rescue squad because they deserve it too, as opposed to the fire department. So that's all. And there's some like lines in there that are all taken from the stories that we were told of how things work between those two departments over there. So that's all legit.
I see. I'm like, uh, gotta admit, yeah, that was flooring me because that's very much not the way it works here in North America. It reminds me of when I was playing through like the original Ace Attorney, and they decided to reference L.A. because they needed it for that particular case, and it just nothing worked from that point on because Ace Attorney is a parody of the Japanese justice system, and applying it to American sensibilities doesn't work because of the differences. It just kind of makes you scratch your head. At least it did mine. So that's good to know. Like, that being said, have you gotten any comments from people from Hong Kong that may have played your game about this?
Yeah, we had one streamer in particular that we highlighted on some of our social media channels, who was from Hong Kong, and she was playing the game, and she was just laughing at all the little references. And there's stuff if you're not from the city, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff you probably won't get because our background artist uh, littered littered every single background in that game with tons of puns. There's fish puns everywhere, like all this stuff, even details that I didn't even notice till after we launched, and then when noticed, I think I didn't notice till like a week after we actually went live. Um, and all these references to very specific Hong Kong things, including like the names of streets and locales, and food mentioned, and just the way certain people treat you, and all this kind of stuff, and behavior of some of the people that you have to rescue. There's a whole deep list of things, including every character. There's got some reference to somebody. And yes, we did have people play it and be like, "Oh my god, this is Hong Kong. This is great." One of our favorite moments was actually before the game launched at GDC. We gave like a special sneak peek of the game to Kit and Krista, who formerly were of Nintendo Minute, but have their own podcast now and their own YouTube show and everything. And we met them at GDC to show them the game. And Kit, unbeknownst to us, had actually lived in Hong Kong before. And so once we had mentioned that, he picked up on stuff immediately, and then was noticing, like, wait a minute, like these buses, the street, like, is this where this is set? So we got to talk to them about that stuff, and they were it sort of validated that, yes, okay, good, we've got the right vibe, we've got the right feeling, people who are from there will get it. Like, that's fantastic.
That's good. And so I suppose we've talked, a lot around the game and the, let's say, the higher functions, but what's it about? Like, who are you playing as? What are you, playing for? That kind of deal. Characters.
Sure. Yeah. So all of our games, when we design them and write them, they all we always create certain components right at the beginning of the design process. And the first one is themes. So every game that we've ever made has a very specific theme. My favorite or is for, like, Alone with You. The theme is breakups. Everything in that game revolves around the concept of breakups, including the planet you're on, which is literally breaking up. And Worse Than Death, the theme was secrets. So for New Harbor, the theme is kind of obviously, probably considering the sort of shonen manga references we're using, a lot of stuff is teamwork. And the way it works is that all of the characters are designed around whether they are team players or they're not team players. And this way it sort of works, like, on a base level in the writing, is like the people who work as a team tend to succeed. The people who don't tend to experience more, discomfort and tragedy and whatnot in their lives, and that's kind of the process of the story. Because the whole point of EMTs, of course, is, no one's a superstar. You're all there. You have to work as a team. That's how things get done. That's how you save lives. And the same goes for the fire department. And we sort of show the two approaches between the rescue squad and the fire department in terms of, like, an actual good or bad team dynamic and what that means for their respective groups. So since you play a rookie paramedic, you're starting your first day at work, which of course is a classic trope. You get the benefit as both a player and as a character to kind of, learn how this world works, learn what's expected of you. But because you're the fresh face, you also get to maybe break through some of those expectations and question things that everyone else takes for granted because they've been there too long, or they're maybe a little embittered or whatnot. So as we just call you rookie in the game. We batted around the idea of letting you name your player, doing all this stuff. We just realized that Queenie, who's your captain in the game, is always just calling you rookie. And I was like, well, if that's what she's going to call you, she's never going to use your name. We should just call you rookie and just save a whole lot of trouble. So you play as the rookie, and then you get to see the team dynamics and kind of help be the catalyst for the story of this team as it goes through these challenges and hopefully eventually comes together again.
And I'm not sure if you can answer this question because it might be a spoiler, but it might be worth asking anyway. Do the police show up as a secret third rival, like, halfway through?
No, in fact, I think we mentioned the police precisely once. Because we talked about that actually while building the game and thinking about it, because obviously you would interact, with them or deal with them. But we realized there was, well, number one, we didn't want to create another squad. And for me, it was like, if you're going to have a police squad, then I need to make another set of characters, and they got to be, like, funny or cool and have, like, cool designs. And we're like, no, we have the two squads. That's the point of the game. I don't want to do a third one. And then we realized, like, if you're always dealing with the police because of, whatever an issue or something happens, then you're not dealing with the fire department, who were supposed to be the characters you're supposed to be interacting with. That's how, the two teams interacting is what drives the story and what pushes things forward. So we realized, like, nope, that's an element we just don't need. It doesn't make any sense. It just adds complication to the story, and we want to focus entirely on, the the squad and the fire department. Our third party in the game, of course, is Betty Wu, who's the reporter who seems to have a something against you as the rescue squad. And sort of with the three of those elements, we realized we didn't need anything else to tell our story, so we just stuck to that.
Makes sense. And honestly, showing better sensibilities than some manga artists I could name. Like, come on, we've all read that shonen series where new baddies show up and outshine the previous season or whatever.
Indeed.
Looking at you, Tide Kubo. Oops. Granted, that's more on the hero side, but it still holds water. Anyway, so how long has the game been out on the various platforms?
We launched on. Oh my God, I've always forgotten the date. November 12th? I forget. We launched last November. my brain has put the entire process out of my mind as we moved on to other things. We launched mid November, so it's just been a couple months now.
And how's the game been faring so far?
It has been softer than we'd hoped for, which we're kind of expecting coming into it, to be honest, just because the games industry is, as you may have noticed, a bit of a mess, and the glut of high quality content is only ever increasing every year. So
this isn't a conversation that we don't have almost weekly at this point.
Indeed.
Right. So we had we'd sort of realized, like, yeah, there's sort of some days there's like no bad time to launch a game, and some days there's no good time to launch a game. So you just kind of have to go for it when you're ready to go for it. So I wish we were doing a little better. That's for sure. But we've also had launches too that have gone both ways. And we're also kind of a long haul. I mean, we're one of the not one of the longest running indie developers, but we're one of the longest running in our kind of space here in the city. So, the game is always meant to have legs. So we'll see what happens in the future with it.
And I think I remember you remarking to a media outlet about how the PlayStation version did significantly better than the Steam version or the PC version.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Steam is such a minefield because of how much, like, just how many games come out every year. I think I remarked to somebody, I mean, I probably muttered this on a street corner every day for the last 12 years, but more games come out like per week or maybe per month on Steam than did the entire year we released Home, which is one of the reasons why Home did so well, because we just had much less competition at the time, and there was some room to breathe and get some eyeballs on it. So it's just naturally a super tough space to be in. With PlayStation, it's a little better because you don't have the same massive amount of content coming out every day or every week. And because of how they organize the store, there are it's not like there are like myriad super good ways to get eyeballs on your game, because you can still get buried pretty easily, but there are more general opportunities for someone to find you, or like wish list or whatever, than just like the main list in Steam, in which you get hosed on pretty quickly.
True enough. Granted, usually when I hear, or at least on this program, we get console indie success stories. It's on the Nintendo Switch. I can't remember the last time I heard somebody praise the PlayStation for helping an indie. But
well, the Switch has been a little bit harder to get discoverability on. In the last few years, so.
Oh yeah, the period of like the gold rush for Switch lasted about 8 months, and after that, it was back to business as usual.
Well, I mean, I suppose it's important to note given where we are at this moment in time, that gold rush could be potentially returning in whatever
Yeah,
capacity, given that
possibly. Yeah.
the Switch 2 just got announced. And apparently not a super amount of people are working on it right now, if GDC surveys are to be believed. But
Hmm.
we'll get into that a bit. That being said, um, what Nintendo really needs to do is have better organization for their Switch 2 eShop. Because that was one thing we constantly heard, not just from devs, just how badly the store's laid out, and in terms of discoverability, not just in terms of searchability, but how games
Usability,
are
let's be
laid.
honest here.
Yes, exactly. So, hopefully, whatever the Switch 2 eShop looks like, it's a lot better than what we got now.
Or even if it's just
Assuming it is completely, actually significantly different.
yeah. I would honestly be like it if they just did a facelift to the eShop in general. Both Switch 2 and Switch.
Right. Anyway, I suppose another interesting thing is, and perhaps the scariest thing of all, is the Steam isn't even the most competitive store I could name. Oh no, that goes to mobile. The apps, the app stores. We've had mobile developers just absolutely run away from it with how much content's there. And that does lead me to my next question. Are you looking to bring Neo Harbor Rescue Squad to any other platform than what's already out there?
The short answer is yes. We have some plans for that, depending on a few factors, which will be hopefully we will know about the next month or two, I guess. So we would like to, of course, yeah. Yeah, we planned for that from day one, and hopefully we can follow through with that.
Indeed. I'm guessing you can't name specific platforms at this particular juncture.
Yeah, I don't want to disappoint anyone in case we say something and then change our mind later. I've been
We've
I've
had
burned
a
myself
lot
on
of
that before.
that.
It's not so much you changing your mind; it's things falling through. It's not that you didn't want to release for X console or Y mobile device, but it's just something happened.
Yeah, be it
That's
financial or you go look at the coding and be like, there's not enough return on investment here to learn how to do this type
or
situation.
the partner turns down the offer. Just there's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen. So best not to name until you're sure. Anyway, so I suppose that leads me to my final question, and that is, can you talk about your next project?
Sure, I can say a little bit. So we are working on our fifth game right now. It's in prototype phase, and I'm actually just catching up on some stuff because the sort of intense launch months for New Harbor took away some time from that. We are returning to horror for our fifth game. There is a cool idea that we pitched that we're working on that is more narrative focused. I guess kind of a return to roots in some cases, but it's something that came up in the final half of working on Neo Harbor. And the way this tends to work with us is, we usually have like just a massive bucket of ideas and concepts, but then sometimes they just don't feel right, or someone else, like frankly, someone else does it, and you go like, oh, that's great. I don't need to do that anymore. And something it's just and something that's just like it's just like an itch, like you just got to deal with it. The idea doesn't go away, and it's the one that keeps coming back. And this concept was one of those. So I'm trying out some new stuff with development that I've not done before is kind of a fun challenge, but to keep me interested, quite frankly, keep me interested in working in games again. And while I can't give you any specifics, we are looking to be scary. We are looking to have a really cool narrative hook that I don't think anyone's done before, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
And it's also in the general realm of survival horror, but I don't want to say any more than that because it's early and I'm liable to change my mind 50 times.
That's a mood.
Well, especially since you're in the prototype phase. Like, this is the time when things are going to change the most.
Yeah, in fact, we actually made a really big decision today. It's going to impact a bunch of stuff that was pretty interesting.
Indeed. Right then. So I'll see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Alex?
Oh, sorry, what? I was distracted.
Do you have any questions for our guest?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. All right, Ben, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today to talk about your game, or at least, Neo Harbor Rescue Squad in detail. And
thanks
we
for
look
having
forward. No problem. We look forward to seeing what you cook up next. Right. So the game is Neo Harbor Rescue Squad. It is out now for Steam, the PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 5 for $19.99. So be sure to pick it up on your platform of choice today. Petty, play us to the next segment. Right, so welcome to the topic of discussion. This week we are talking about, at long last, the Nintendo Switch 2. This is actually a topic I've been holding off for a few weeks.
Yeah, we've at least the past 2 months we've shelved it 3 times?
Something like that. Mainly because while the official announcement finally happened last Thursday, Nintendo Switch 2 news has been not leaking out, kind of torrenting out, especially the past couple of weeks.
Again, it was probably intended to be revealed earlier, but then got delayed, but then some of the other stuff didn't get delayed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And NDAs lapsed and Nintendo's forgot to tell them to re-sign.
Yeah, or they couldn't or wouldn't or whatever. But yeah, it's like you cannot convince me that that video was supposed to go out in October. Because this is how you get it wasn't yes, we got actual leakers who got access to sensitive information, sensitive materials, when the motherboard shots got out, that kind of thing. Yeah, those were legitimately leaked. But when you had official third-party peripheral makers and accessory makers showcasing 3D printed replicas.
Yeah,
because they need to have those to be able to make. They need to have those before the thing comes out, so that they can make their things fit it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that things got pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, for all that was finally revealed, there's a whole lot that wasn't revealed. Honestly,
in fact, there really wasn't all that much that was, aside from a lot of physical. We know what it looks like. We know some of the new physical gimmicks, like the Joy-Cons going in sideways and having a button release and presumably magnets, and there being a little connector thingy that sticks out inside the... It doesn't stick out past the frame, but inside a groove in the frame that people are worried about.
I have very high concerns about that not about that getting snapped off within 2.5 seconds of being near a child.
Well, if it's in the groove, that helps. But
Yeah,
we'll see how it ends up being.
The render they
and
showed us does not instill me with confidence of that holding up to being anywhere near a child.
That plus and the fact that it seems very likely that there will be a gimmick where the Joy-Cons can be used as a mouse.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case or if that was just them trying to be playful, because I don't see any reason to use them as a mouse. I almost think that was just them trying to fill time in that.
That was my
reel.
initial thing, but everybody else seems pretty confident that they can be used as a mouse, so I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway,
I guess we'll find out.
But that's basically all we know about that, and the fact that there's a new Mario Kart on it with some redesigned characters and stuff, and that's really almost all the concrete information we have.
You missed
because this was an announcement of the announcement.
Yeah, you missed one more thing, and that is the announcement for the next announcement. We're going to learn more information about the Nintendo Switch 2 on April 2nd.
Which I guess means that it's extremely unlikely that it's coming out before April.
Well, yeah.
It's probably coming out holiday.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That wasn't the release date.
Mm-hmm.
That was the find out more on this date.
Mm-hmm. And is it April 2nd for us or April 2nd in Japan?
Well, it's going to be April 2nd for the world, because that's not how that works anymore.
Fair enough.
That isn't how that's worked since the 90s. You don't have
is it going to be the actual comes out? Is it going to be April 2nd for the Western? Are we going to be seeing streams on the 1st and people joking about it being an April Fool's Day prank?
Oh, I think I get what you're saying here. No, we don't know the stream times or when they're going to put it out. I'm presumably Nintendo will have a timetable.
Because if it's going to be April 2nd in Japan, it's going to be airing April 1st here.
They're not. They're probably not going to do that. But
ideally, they won't. But this is also Nintendo.
So yeah, I'm not sure they. I mean, it's reasonably likely they won't, but I don't know.
Again,
certainly, we've been getting the Thursday releases of Digimon Digimon Liberators on Wednesday pretty reliably. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and honestly, this rollout kind of reminds me of the PlayStation 4 rollout. Anyone else remember that?
Vaguely.
Well, if you're granted, that one was even more information restricted. I still remember the first video Sony put out about the PlayStation 4, and that was of the controller. Or if you want to keep it in the Nintendo house, this is like the original Nintendo Wii. Actually, quite a few of their initial product reveals. They just focused on something rather than the everything. It's just with the Nintendo Switch 2 being less gimmicky than this is the most not gimmicky Nintendo release since I'm going to say the 3DS. Yes, I know the 3DS had its own gimmick.
We also don't really know for certain what the Switch's gimmicks are going to be. They had the little things in the trailer thing, but they didn't really lay out what all it's going to do other than it's a bigger Switch and whatever the fuck the Joy-Cons movement thing. If that's to really be a mouse or represent it has motion controls, we don't know yet.
Right. But going back to the 3DS, I mean, it had its 3D gimmick, but you couldn't emphasize that in video.
Mm-hmm.
And also the 3DS was very much an upgrade to the Nintendo DS.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also had the
And
gimmick of motion as well, but nothing really used it especially well.
Arguable. Like, it depends on how big you were into gyro aiming, apparently.
Mm.
Like, it's just with the way that system was set up, you couldn't do gyro aiming in 3D at the same time.
Well, unless you wanted to vomit, but yeah.
Yeah. No, no. You could literally not do it. Like, you can't actually have the 3D going and the gyro. It just doesn't work.
Mm.
Because the 3D needs you to have it still in order to work. And if you're moving the device from here to there, you're not going to get the 3D effect.
That's why Kid Icarus Uprising used the stylus.
Yes. Anyway, so getting back to the Nintendo Switch 2, it's been like people were actually disappointed in its reveal, in that we didn't get the grand irony is we didn't get the traditional Nintendo reveal. I'm like,
yeah, well, this was like a reveal of when they're going to do the traditional Nintendo reveal, it felt like.
No. You misunderstand. I mean, because Nintendo didn't have a central wacky gimmick that's completely off the wall and we've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. Asterisk being whatever the hell the Joy-Cons are doing. If it's going to be a mouse now, or if we just don't know if that's their wacky gimmick this time, or what it is.
Well, here's the thing. That's a subtler thing than what I'm talking about.
The fact that it's a Switch 2 instead of a Switch U now with an entire additional screen somehow, or it kind of this is for a Nintendo major non-handheld, or not even, it's not even a handheld thing, like since the Game Boy era. This is a much more of an iterative change rather than a revolutionary change, so far as we know.
Yeah, and don't forget that Nintendo's last dedicated handheld had the glasses-free 3D gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this is the grand irony of things. Nintendo zagged when everyone just expects them to zig now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Nintendo isn't doing it's doing a very traditional iterative update, and nobody was really, nobody was. How do I put this? Nobody's mind blown by it, but people
they're not finally doing the system that you control by putting your hands through a box of goop, and that's how it reads your mind?
Or neural implants?
Like that.
Note, this was an actual joke that was going around the time of the N64, due to how secretive they were about the controller for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The point is, Nintendo isn't busting out, the next motion control or the next Wii U gamepad.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even the name is boring as fuck. It's it's the Switch 2.
Yeah, we either had two options for this, let's be real. It was either Switch 2 or Switch Pro.
It could have been the new Switch.
Well, they
Oh God. Like,
Me and Adam both.
Because, if this were a previous era, that's exactly what they would fucking
Very
name
much so, yes.
I'm like, but here's the thing: you can thank the Wii U tanking as hard as it did for Nintendo stopping getting too cute for their britches on some of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Wii, we've talked about the Wii U's failures before, but very briefly, one of the biggest was the messaging in the console's name.
I still had family friends who their kids like game and they didn't understand the Wii U wasn't just the tablet they could buy for the Wii. It was a brand new system.
Yeah. And PlayStation, if nothing else, has demonstrated that, just having, the sequential numbers will communicate that this is a new system.
Mm-hmm.
It's boring, but it fucking works.
Yep.
I guess they could have also gone with Super Switch, but that's a little bit retro and, kitschy now.
Honestly, I almost would have liked that better, but that's just me, and I'm also very old.
Yeah. Maybe Mega Switch, but once again, Nintendo could have found some cute, cute wordplay that would have worked, but, they just didn't want to bother hurting their golden goose. They don't want to see another Wii U situation.
Yeah. The Switch 64. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. No, they don't want a Switch U.
Yeah.
They don't want to once again go from, one of the best-selling consoles of all time to one of the worst-selling consoles of all time.
Mm-hmm.
The next lowest-selling Nintendo console of all time.
Yeah, because that would not be good.
No. So, Nintendo is playing it conservatively, and I get the disappointment that Nintendo isn't trying something boldly experimental. But here's the thing: Nintendo doesn't need to reinvent the wheel to get boldly experimental. Because lest you forget, Nintendo did that plenty on the Nintendo Switch. It's just a lot. People have already forgotten some of it, like Nintendo Labo. Nobody remembers Nintendo Labo,
except for the 15 to 20 people who own it.
I remember it as an idea, but it wasn't something I ever really.
I thought it would have been interesting to do with my niece if she lived closer, but that's about the extent we went with that, and that's just because she's a fairly creative kid.
Also, for those keeping score at home, they did mention something about some Switch games not being playable on the Switch 2. The most likely candidates for that are things like Labo, because the Switch 2 doesn't seem to have the IR sensor, because barely anything besides the Labo used that.
Either that in Ring Fit,
or Ring Fit, which has a required accessory that uses the Joy-Con attachment rail.
And I'm not sure what all it uses from that to make that work.
So yeah, as far as we know, that's the most likely stuff to not be compatible, is stuff that is non-compatible for hardware reasons.
Yeah, because I doubt they're killing off Amiibo entirely, at least with the Switch line, because people still love Smash.
That would be I would be disappointed if they totally killed Amiibos.
Yeah. I get if they don't make any more Amiibos, but just killing support for it would be a problem.
Also, it's just using an NFC thing that can potentially otherwise be useful.
Yeah.
Not that they'll use it, but it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so in regards to, for lack of a better term, Mario Kart 9,
it's actually Mario Kart Switch 2.
Get out.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It's probably Mario Kart 9.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it was 8 Deluxe till somebody on Twitter mentioned that there were 24 races, and like, oh, wait a minute.
Apparently there are a lot of things that are visible that are different in that, like, if you look carefully, but not everyone does that.
I was going to say that, the detail hunters have uncovered some interesting tidbits, and you mentioned the big one, like they doubled the amount of racers that you can race that are in an actual race.
Mm-hmm. Not sure if this is for single player mode only, or if this will also be 24 player online races.
And the textures are apparently a lot better than what you find on the Nintendo Switch.
I mean, granted, that could also just be stock footage, the whole trailer footage thing like we have now, where it's CG, not like in-game footage.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something we will find out when we learn more in April.
Yep. So I think that'll bring this Nintendo Switch 2 discussion to a close.
Real quick, what games do you think are going to be stopping regular Switch development and moving over to the Switch 2?
Metroid Prime 4, if I had to guess.
Probably. And there's been rumors of another Zelda title in the work. That's probably moving over to Switch 2.
Well,
do you think we'll have a Pokemon game at Switch 2 launch? Because we just had Scarlet and Violet not too long ago.
Well, it depends on the status of Pokemon ABC or ZA.
Yeah.
Legend Z to A is likely to at least be a double.
Yeah, I don't see Pokemon abandoning the system with a massive install base. That's never happened.
Hopefully it'll perform better on the upgraded hardware, though.
Yeah. And we also don't know, if Switch games can take advantage of Switch 2 with updates, or if they are just going to be locked into Switch 1 mode.
Right.
That's something we will learn in April, more than likely.
Anyway, so yeah, that'll about do it for this episode of Fragments of Silicon. Coming up on the week ahead, no Friday show this week. So coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews for Spud Customs, Achilles, Legends Untold, Annihilate the Spence, and Orcs. So until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.